Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my third video of the day. Actually, I'm not sure whether it's the third or the fourth, but thereabouts. The important thing is the conversation that we are having on the things that I've thrown out for your consideration. What is happening around the BRICS and the BRICS summit, where a number of countries were invited to be members, and some of them on the African continent. The AU becoming a permanent member of the G20. The article which I looked at briefly by Professor Brett L. Carter, which basically says, oh man, we are into another Cold War, this time between China and the United States of America. The non-aligned movement, which I've discussed, I think, in fairly good detail, given how short our videos are. I've also looked at the books by Tom Mboya, The Challenge of Nationhood, but also Nkrumah's biography by David Rooney, Kwame Nkrumah, Vision and Tragedy, and so on. And maybe I should introduce another book at this point, because it can also help us to kind of see the point now that we are now going to try and bring these notes together and sort of draw some conclusions. This is a book by Dambisa Moyo, a scholar. Dambisa Moyo, the book is titled Winner Take All, China's Race for Resources and What It Means for Us. Dambisa Moyo is fairly known in academic circles. She wrote her first book, or maybe I believe it was her first book. It was called Dead Aid. Fairly controversial, because it was really digging into the whole aid industry and trying to pinpoint why aid has not worked. And I think Dambisa Moyo kind of put forward the thesis that perhaps commercial borrowing I'm saying could carefully, because her books tackle a lot of issues, but I think this is one of the key things that came up, about commercial borrowing that is from commercial sources, and concessional loaning, borrowing, which is mostly from the Bretton Woods institutions. This is also important when we look at this conversation, because in my view, if this new Cold War is a reality, then we cannot forget the history that informs it. And what comes to mind automatically is the schism between China now and the United States in the global stage. And Dambisa Moyo's book, Winner Takes It All, goes to the heart of the matter. China's race for resources. China's race for resources. China's buying of commodities around the world in different countries, has been a very important feature of this conversation. Now, of course, China overtook Japan to be the second largest economy. And by some accounts, it's possible that China might surpass the USA itself and become the largest economy in the world. Now, the reality then is that looking at Brett Carter's long article and arguments, almost everything that happens in the world today of global significance is in one way or the other related to this new Cold War that Brett Carter is talking about. So you go back to the BRICS and the summit, and you ask yourself, of course, the BRICS have, they have had this agenda of de-dollarization, which again also just fits into the very same equation and the very same arguments that we are having here today on this platform. Okay, so the BRICS comes with their summit. They invite a number of countries, including African nations, Ethiopia, Egypt. The G7 comes and now says that the AU has become a permanent member. And of course, one needs to seriously think, what exactly does that mean? Africa hasn't changed in any significant way. Africa still contributes less than 5% of global trade. That's a reality. Africa still hosts some of the poorest people in the world. So what is it that has changed? Is there, in fact, a new scramble for Africa, which then has fallen neatly into this so-called new Cold War narrative? Could that be what is going on? Is it about resources? Is it about Dambisa Moyo's thesis in winner take all, China's race for resources and what it means for us? Because if this has importance in what we are discussing, then without doubt, and here we go back to Brett's thesis, there is no way that this new Cold War will not penetrate the African continent, because the African continent still holds a lot of commodities which are important in continuing to fire industry and innovation in the West. So this is how these balls that are thrown out there come together, and then everything kind of starts to make sense looked at from that perspective. The world has not changed. It's still the very same old realist self-help world. Africa's integration has not achieved political unity. It has been gradualist since the 60s. It has been manipulated left, right, center, and from any other angle you can think about. And so Nkrumah's initial vision of immediate unity of the African continent was defeated, and therefore that process has been gradual. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I would want to do a last video and just expound on these questions as I still look at the books that we have read today, and maybe say a little more about what we see as the points of confluence between all these facts that I've thrown out there. And we will also revisit Brett Carter's article in the last video. As usual here, we encourage folks to read especially the young ones. Thank you and see you in the last video in this series.